Now it seems we are recording. We have a great audience here with us today. So therefore, I would like to welcome both our podcast listeners as well as our visitors here at K11 Art Mall today to today's live podcast episode from the Swedish Chamber of Commerce. It is now late November here in Hong Kong, and with Christmas obviously only being less than a month away, the topic of today's chat will be the sustainability aspects of Christmas. As introduced by Gabriella, my name is Leonard Lenhoff. I am a scholar at the Swedish Chamber of Commerce here in Hong Kong. And I am very, very happy to be hosting today's panelists, being Karine Hirn, Chief Sustainability Officer and co-founder of East Capital, as well as Linda Bradley, Trade and Invest Commissioner, Hong Kong for Sweden, from Business Sweden. I will let you introduce yourself to our listeners in just a brief moment. But first, I would like to give our listeners a very brief introduction to today's hot topic by highlighting a few facts related to sustainability and related to Christmas. For example, did you know that during Christmas time, the average household electricity consumption increases by 30%? Meanwhile, this is in the EU, the waste production increases with roughly 30% during Christmas, which contributes to the carbon footprint also being around 6% higher during Christmas compared to the rest of the year, also in the EU. So as always, there is certainly lots of room and a large need for improvement when it comes to making our lovely Christmas celebrations more eco-friendly and more green. When it comes to Hong Kong, Christmas is widely celebrated, and an interesting fact that you might not know about is that in terms of spending, Christmas is actually the biggest spending season here in Hong Kong, based on statistics from Visa, with general retail and restaurants making up the biggest share there. Meanwhile, looking at Sweden and taking a look at one new trend that really has been emerging during the last couple of years is that people are more and more concerned and aware about the sustainability aspect of Christmas. For example, according to a 2021 survey, 57% of the participants said that they were actively trying and prioritizing sustainable food and to reduce food waste during the Christmas table. Also, 85% believes that it is very important that products which contribute to rainforest deforestation are being removed from Swedish stores, and that they all get a more clear labeling and certification of grocery products. Of course, all of this is something that's been highly considered here during Swedish Winter in K11. For example, most of the furniture here and all the production material here, the majority of it has been reused, and the postcards that are being sold here are made out of seed paper instead of the more normal type of wood paper. But with the limited time, I won't steal all of it, as I will now hand it over to today's guests for you to present yourself and the organizations you come from. So how about we start with you, Karine? Could you please give us a maybe 1 or 2 minute presentation to yourself and your organization?
Yes, hi. So very happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me. So my name is Karine Hirn. I'm a co-founder of a company called East Capital. We were started actually 25 years ago. We just celebrated this 25th anniversary. I was in Sweden for that 2 weeks ago. And we are basically, we're an investor. We're a fund manager. So we invest in companies which are listed on stock exchanges around the world with a focus on so-called emerging markets. So here, for instance, in Hong Kong, we actually are investing into Chinese companies, not Hong Kong companies, because they are not. China is an emerging market. Hong Kong is not an emerging market in our world. My role within the company has changed quite a lot, but for the last few years, I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer. So I look at the way when we invest into all these companies across different sectors, across different countries, we need to assess their level and standards in terms of sustainability. We take this into consideration when we are actually doing the analysis of these companies. And then we also do a lot of work to help them become more sustainable. And I can go into more details about that later on. But basically, my work is entirely about sustainability.
Thank you. Linda?
Yeah, nice to be here. Now you hear me better. So my job is an everyday job, actually. It's about helping Swedish great companies and brands to grow into new markets, but also to get stronger when they are already in a market. And I think the job is getting more and more interesting every day because I feel we have so much great companies coming out of Sweden. We have a lot of large corporations like Volvo, Thule that are here today, but we also have a lot of small brands that are popping up, and all of them are actually considering sustainability as part of their brand concept. So I think this is a new era where sustainability will never be like a second phrase. It will be the first phrase.
Well, thank you very much for that introduction to you and to your companies. Well, we'll get back to that more later. But first, obviously, with Christmas coming up, I would like to know, how are you celebrating Christmas this year, you and your families?
So, Christmas as such is very special for me this year because it's going to be the first time I'm going to be able to celebrate it with my children, who will all be back to Hong Kong from overseas. And in that sense, I think it gives a deeper meaning to this celebration of what has traditionally been a family-oriented, of course, celebration. It's a bit like Chinese New Year, where you want to gather everyone that you really love around the table. And that is the focus. So the time spent together is, for me, very, very precious. And I'm really looking forward to this. Because actually, after having spent these 2.5 years in partial or complete isolation to the rest of the world, I think the Christmas 2022 is going to be fantastic. So I look forward to that.
I guess we all do. How about you, Linda?
Yeah, I'm also actually heading back to Sweden and to see my daughter, who is already there. And for me, it's also about this being together with family and a lot about caring and also being outdoors. So I think this kind of nature perspective is always very present for us during winter times because we like to go skiing, we like to enjoy the clean air. So this is what I will try to do. Depends on the snow.
Sounds great. And I can imagine that both of you have seen Christmas in a lot of different countries and so on, which itself leads to a lot of changes when it comes to how you celebrate and so on. But I would still like to know, would you say that your behavior and the way that you've been celebrating Christmas has changed throughout the years? I mean, if you compare yourself to maybe 20 years ago or something, is there any trends in how you celebrate Christmas, would you say?
If I start, definitely, and it's got to do a lot with this topic of overconsumption or not. Like 20 years ago, I had small children, and you would almost think, oh, it's the kids, because we thought that the kids would think it's a good Christmas if you count that they would have many Christmas presents. And this is something which actually, when I think about it, I think is completely mad. So now it's going to be much more about maybe you give a gift, maybe you don't need to give a gift actually, because it's spending time together or doing something together as an activity, going out to a nice excursion, or could actually be much more meaningful. You want to create memories, because when you think about it, do you actually remember what you have received as a Christmas present during all these years? Hardly ever, which as such is actually an issue. So definitely fewer things, more about time spent together and things experienced together than just accumulation of presents and that's it. And then again, the finding more meaningful way of gifting.
Oh, great. What about you, Linda? Do you see any patterns in your way of celebrating Christmas that have changed?
No, I think what Karine says is somehow very true even for me. I would always, of course, as a kid, you would be maybe more interested in the beginning in having the greatest gifts. But as time goes by, you realize that it's about the time we spend together and what we do together. And for me, it's also, I think, just experience kind of slow living. I think the slow living is the new luxury in a way, because we are living a quite hectic city life, at least here in Hong Kong. And then to go back to a bit more Swedish traditional way of living, where it was not in a big city, it was more in the countryside and closer to nature. That kind of Christmas I would like to spend more and more. I'm not always doing it, but I'm striving to do it. So this has been changing over the years, that it's more about slowing down.
Oh, great. Also, one thing I was thinking about with you, obviously introducing your companies and organizations that you work with. Do you have much Christmas celebrations going on at East Capital and at Business Sweden, or how does it look like?
So we started like already many years ago to instead of spending money buying stuff to people, we will give them a voucher to a store or somewhere which we believe is more maybe doing things more sustainably than others, and that people will be able to use that as they wish, because there's nothing worse than just thinking, oh, this is a nice whatever, yeah, it's a nice gift, everybody should like it, but you can't, you don't know exactly what your employees would be looking for, and so that's the way we want to celebrate. And this year it was of course a bit special, as I was mentioning, that our company turned 25. So everybody, each of our employees got this vest here, which has been very good to have, because in Sweden and in Europe, we do have an issue now with the prices of energy. So people are trying to save money and doing the right things actually to do that, to keep the temperature a bit lower. So it's actually very nice to have a vest like that. So this one, we felt everybody will find it very useful, but it was also done with quality, so we can have it for a long time.
Yeah, for sure. That's definitely a clever way of, thinking about this year Christmas, thinking about the circumstances and so on in that way. Interesting. What about Business Sweden? Do you have any type of Christmas celebrations? How does it work like?
I think we represent very much like generally in a Swedish company, how would they celebrate a Christmas, right? So I think one important thing for most Swedish companies is that they organize a big julbord, it's called in Swedish, but you get everyone together and everyone enjoys traditional food, a lot of local produce, and the Swedish food is really like something associated with this Swedish Christmas or the Swedish midsummer. That's the other part of the season. Oh. And then you treat all the employees to this, so you sit together in one table, and everyone independent on your level in the company, you go to this dinner together. Oh. And this is always happening in December, right? And then for giving each other gifts, I think more and more we are now quite aware of, don't want to give gifts that's a burden to someone. So we want to give gifts that is something you can either eat or use. Something that is consumed. So I think a lot of the Swedish food, as well as I have brought some ideas for that could be gifts, but more like natural skincare or body care, something that you are using. So this is part of the Swedish, I think, corporate culture, to be more enjoying each other company and enjoying Swedish food.
I see. But is it also not a bit hard to, unite around that, since you both come from very international organizations, people come from different time zones and different countries? Is it not a bit hard to really stick to the Christmas traditions and so on, working in such international companies? Do you see what I mean? Or?
Well, I mean, if you want to do it a sustainable way, you just organize smaller events locally. You're not going to fly people from around the world just to have to enjoy a Christmas lunch in Stockholm. No. And I hope you do the same. And so that still works. And you can unite. You can make people feel like united by sharing pictures, putting it on the intranet, and saying that, that was the way we celebrated. And we for a long time here in Hong Kong, we would actually do, we call it the Christmas hike. We would hike because Hong Kong has the most fantastic hiking trails in the world. And so we take a day off, we hike to a place, and then we have lunch together, which was also a very nice way. And I can tell you that the colleagues in Sweden were very jealous about the way we celebrated our Christmas here in Hong Kong.
Wow, great to hear. So earlier you obviously mentioned how your way of celebrating Christmas have changed. Would you say that from that perspective, the way of companies celebrating Christmas, has that also changed very much? You came back to how you're more focused on maybe having locally produced food and so on. Is that something that's very occurring in East Capital as well, or how?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think people are more aware. It's also a generational thing. I think our younger employees would definitely not expect anything else, and they request it. And but across generations, I think everybody now is aware that this is just not like a fashion thing. I mean, it is really here to last, and it's really important. So another way of seeing it is that around Christmas time, you don't only think about your family, but you think people around you. You realize how lucky you are to have a job, to have a roof on your head, and not to be worried about how to feed your family. And there are a lot of people around the world who don't have these luxuries. So another thing that I think companies are doing more and more is to donate money to organizations, which I think is absolutely key. I remember we used to spend money on actually producing Christmas cards and sending Christmas cards to people. I always was wondering, do they even open it, and what do they do with it? Now instead we put this money and donate to organizations, and then we send an email telling people that that's what we've done with the money we will otherwise have spent on Christmas cards and giving stuff that you maybe do not need. And back to, in Europe, obviously there is a situation very difficult in Ukraine. So we've been supporting an organization called Swedish Rescuers, which are basically people who are going to Ukraine and bring ambulances to help anybody who has been injured during the war. So, and I think for companies internally, externally, towards your clients, toward your suppliers, toward any kind of stakeholder, people do appreciate that more than anything else.
Okay, great. Moving on to the next section. I mean, we're going to still stay within, Christmas and sustainability and so on. But I would ask you, Linda, since you really provided some good perspectives on how your company's way of celebrating Christmas has really turned into a sustainable way of celebrating Christmas. What advice would you give to companies? Think about companies in general when it comes to sustainable Christmas. A few sets of clear advice. What would you say to them if they really want to incorporate having sustainable Christmases?
I think like any holiday, and Christmas being maybe the largest holiday for many companies, that we want to give something to our employees. But so it's somehow we are communicating values. We are telling them, what is important for our company, and this is a chance to communicate the values. So whatever we give them, we are giving them a piece of the company value. So if we go out and tell our employees that, stay home, take care of your family, spend some extra time, take a break. We are very, for example, cautious about allowing our employees to actually use Christmas to, not to work, but to enjoy other parts of life. And I'm coming back to this, I guess, slow living in a sense, but to really offer them a time to enjoy life and not just constantly thinking about deadlines and work and, taking some extra time off. This kind of being able to communicate what you as a company believe are important, I think it's an excellent opportunity. So, and this could be for Hong Kong as well. Here it sometimes stops, maybe temporarily, 2 days, and then it's back again. But maybe I would advise maybe giving some extra time to your employees to enjoy their family and care for each other. I think that would be one good way to celebrate Christmas from a corporate perspective.
Very good. Thank you much. And switching over to the consumer side of things, really, and how individuals celebrate Christmas, I thought it was really interesting how you touched upon how your children used to be very, very focused on gifts and so on, but how things have changed. What advice would you give to just the general individual, the consumer, so to say?
It's a difficult question. Of course, it's a very personal choice, and it's all depending on your budget. But people used to think if it's green, it's expensive, meaning it's more durable, so it costs more. It's not true, because you have to take into consideration the true cost of things. And by that I mean that, first of all, you need to take into consideration what it has cost to the nature, how you've created things that you will be selling to people, but also like how long you're going to be able to use it. And so that's one way of seeing it. So whatever you buy, whatever you get something, you should maybe consider, okay, where does it come from? How is it been made? By whom? With what circumstances? And maybe how long I'm going to be using it for? And you don't need everything. So this part about, for instance, what we call the circular economy and the reusing, recycling. There is actually one first one, which is refuse. It sounds very negative, but sometimes you should also think this way. Refuse to myself. I say, yeah, I mean, this is nice, but maybe I don't need it. Maybe I can have something else, or maybe I just don't have it. Of course, it's going a bit against consumption, as you would say it, but I may say, again, rather consume fewer things in a way which is more sustainable than a lot of things where I don't think eventually we as individuals will be happy if we realize that our own footprint related to our consumption is actually not at the right level, because we can't, that's the definition of sustainability, is making things durable. Like the resources are limited, so you need to think about how they're being used, basically. So,
is that something that very much applies to, if we're looking from, the perspective of companies again, and how they celebrate Christmas? Do you think that the same applies, to companies really? Just thinking of resources and so on, and how to waste less and everything is. I'm just really trying to get some concrete idea on how a company, for example, could make Christmas more sustainable.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's maybe not so much connected to Christmas in a way, but it's now more and more the circularity. So it's always about considering when we produce a new product, how will it be used, and ultimately when we have done with the product, how will it be recycled or reclaimed, or will it have a second life? And I think Christmas is an excellent opportunity to maybe deep dive into this, because we associate Christmas maybe with consumption, and then the topic of consumption comes up, right? So what are we consuming? And I think the Swedish companies now are more and more, I can hardly say that there is any Swedish company who's not considering the circularity when they produce something, because you have to take responsibility as a company today. So you have to think about what's going to happen after I produced this item, and how will it be used, and how will it be taken back? Is it biodegradable? For example, I took some brands with me that we are showcasing here, which is Swedish beauty products. But they all, which is great about the brands, is that they all use sustainable packaging. So all of them have actually produced, the materials are usually based on reclaimed material, and then it's possible to recycle the material and then use the material again to produce the same type of package. So I think that's one part of what's always coming in the new products. But then it's also the ingredients that are organic and natural rather than chemical. I think beauty, for example, as an industry has changed from becoming, from being a very chemical industry to becoming more of a natural and much more sustainable industry. And this is a big shift. Used to be all about chemicals. And this industry, Sweden is, at the moment, I would say, one of the leaders in. So it's about the natural and organic beauty concept, not about the small wrinkles.
Yeah, I see. And
If I could just add something as well to what Linda said. Sweden, being part of the European Union, is a country where companies not only need to care, but they are forced to care about these things, because there are a number of new regulations that have been implemented or are even coming in place, where each company has to report on its corporate sustainability, and there are different elements, there are different dimensions. It tends to be a bit complicated, but basically there is no more the situation where a company might not care and might not have to talk about it. Every company now in Europe will have to look into these things. So it's a big trend, and I think here it's actually obviously a very positive thing, because you got to move along, so to say.
Yeah, I think you both touched upon a lot of different, very interesting aspects. As you said, sustainability isn't just a trend that you can decide to jump on or not. I mean, you have to follow what you have to do when it comes to sustainability and so on. And I think you also, Linda, touched upon something very interesting, which is that obviously there is a lot of things we can do to reduce waste and to increase our sustainability mindset during Christmas, but that also applies to the rest of the year, of course. It's not anything that is just purely isolated to Christmas and so on. So even though Christmas might be over in a month or so on, I think we can all just keep the spirit of a sustainable Christmas in mind for the rest of the year. I feel like we've covered so much, and we've gotten so many good answers from you related to sustainability and so on. But I would like to ask you one additional last question. I mean, you already gave some advice on how to think when doing gifts and celebrating and so on. But if you could pick a gift for someone, you talked about the vouchers and so on. But if you would just recommend a gift to our podcast listeners and so on, and what they should think about, could you give us any idea? It's a Christmas gift advice.
Well, I think you will have to come to K11 and look around at Swedish Winter, because there are a number of amazing companies presenting their goods and services, having ideas, because it's also meaningful. You will know that it's coming from Sweden. So that would be my piece of advice. Come to the Swedish Winter and look around and find something you will not find anywhere else.
I think that was a very, very, very good piece of advice when it comes to Christmas gifts. You, Linda, you already touched upon some of it.
I already brought some items, and they are actually for show here at the K11 mall, and it's a few of the emerging skincare products, and they are all really nice. So we have one brand called Estelle & Thiel that's sensitive skin anti-aging products, but are all organic. So very good ingredients from Swedish nature. We have another brand called Saga of Idun, beautiful brand name, by the way, also based on marine algae, so quite interesting, using our clean waters. And then we have a nail care brand, been around for 30 years, hidden one called Scratch Nails, also from Sweden, and they use only essential oils in their products. Very nice. And then we have a brand called LA Bruket that actually just opened up their brand store here in Hong Kong. And they have very nice recipes based from Swedish nature. So very nice brands, all of them. So
this
come
must
and
be
look at them.
the biggest lip balm I've ever seen, which is, by the way, a good thing about being sustainable, because if it's very small, then you consume it quickly and then you throw away. So this is very big for people with big lips or just people that want to keep their lip balm for a long time.
Works both ways.
Exactly.
Oh, great. I feel all of us have gotten so many nice insights on everything, on what to buy from a sustainability perspective, of course, but also really what both companies and us consumers can really think about when we, evaluate what we want with Christmas, what is important, and so on. And I think both individuals, companies, everyone really will be able to take, great advice from you related to that. So,
Well, it was a pleasure to be here, and I think both of us, we can just say now, God jul.
God jul.
God jul and Merry Christmas to everyone.
good jul, Merry Christmas, everyone, and stay tuned for more podcasts coming from the Swedish Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye.